You're watching an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company.
Welcome, everybody, to the Vegas Player Podcast. Johnny Ciccatelli, Jimmy Naples. We are the Steel Valley Syndicate coming to you live from downtown Youngstown, Ohio, a.k.a. Crimetown, USA. We're here in the Youngstown studio in downtown. And, of course, we're joined by the host of the show, the man himself, the Vegas Player, Jimmy Melodor, coming to us live from Las Vegas. Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Johnny and Jimmy, always great to see you guys, man. Pleasure. You got me up early this morning.
Yeah, we do. And, if anybody's wondering why it looks a little different this week, Jimmy's coming to us on his phone. No problems. We got, best connections we get you. So, look, we're talking today. We got a few things to talk about. First of all, I know one of the previous episodes we talked about how Sandy Naples got you out of the draft, right? He got you out of Vietnam.
Right.
He ended up bringing you back to Youngstown. You went down to Northside Hospital. You met this girl who you just met for the first time in your life. She was 3 months pregnant. She signed her name as Annie Melodor, and that was enough. Got you out of there. What was the doctor's name again that signed off on it?
Narducci. Oh, no, Narducci. I beg your pardon. Narducci. Dr. Narducci.
Yeah, well, that was right there in the Northside Hospital. Got him out of Vietnam, but Sandy actually died right after that. Is that true, Jim?
He got shot. Yeah. Well, maybe not immediately after that, but maybe within a year he got shot. Yeah.
Within a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how does it work then? We want to kind of tag that story a little bit. Were you done with the draft board? Did Sandy get you out of it completely?
Obviously, they found out that my wife was not pregnant somehow, some way, the draft board, and they sent me a notice to go in to be drafted. No fooling around, and I had nobody to consult with, so I had to do it. When I got there, it was a nightmare. So immediately take all your clothes off. You go stand in line. Tons of guys in a line.
Butt naked? They made you stand butt naked in line?
Yeah, naked in line. Now I was aware that a little Korean saxophone player, Kenny Hing, that was working for me, had gotten the draft board so crazy. He walked in playing the saxophone naked, playing the song My Funny Valentine. And they got so fed up with him, they threw him out, and he got deferred out of there. They threw him out. So I got this ingenious idea. I brought my piccolo, a little small piccolo, which is so aggravating. That sound is so aggravating. That really is the piccolo that I created, the opening number for Elvis Presley. Da 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 da. With the piccolo. Anyway, I stand in line. I figured, let me start playing this thing naked with all these guys around. I figured I'll get some attention. And sure enough, here comes a couple of guys grabbing me by the shoulder, say, "You can't do that." And of course, I wanted to do anything to get some attention, and I told them to go ahead and bump off. And they made me get out of line. And I walked into a room full of sergeants or whatever you want to call them, and start playing, and they got annoyed with me immediately. They put me in another back room with another guy named Brandwood. So I walked in his room playing the piccolo, and he looked at me and he says, "I know what you're doing." He says, "You stop it." And I just didn't. I ignored him. He was on to me. Now, mind you, I'm naked with a little piccolo. And I walked up and I started poking him in the chest lightly. And he says, You better cut that out. And I kept playing the piccolo and touch him in the chest lightly. He said, "What do you think you're doing?" And I said, "You know what? This is this is going to be disastrous for me because this guy's onto me. It's going to be a nightmare." So I kept touching him, that play piccolo, to finally enough that he just got so fed up with me. And then he says, "You know what? You don't even deserve to go in the army. Get your effing ass the hell out of here. Follow that yellow line and get out of here, you SOB." And he ran me out of the office. So I got up, I went and signed out. I don't know where I was going, but I did put my clothes on, of course. And I got out at the desk and I walked out of that place. I was so elated. I got in the cab. And at that time, I give the cab driver $50 tip. Took me to the airport. I couldn't believe it. I got away from that thing. And that was the end of the draft for me.
So Sandy Naples gets you out of the draft first. And then your piccolo playing got you out on the second time, huh?
Can you imagine that, standing in line? I mean, I just, there's no way I could have went into that army because I would have drove everybody out of their mind. All I wanted to do was play my horn. They're going to take that away from me. I was still married, had a beautiful woman living, and now I'm going to go in here with these mama looks. So that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mama Luke's, you got me using that word again. I've been riding around town, people pulling out on me. Oh, you stupid Mama Luke! And now I got my 10-year-old says it too. He's been driving my wife crazy because everybody to him is a Mama Luke. So,
you know that guy from Cleveland, Anthony Ippolito. He said, "I love that word. I haven't heard it in years." Now he's using it, but that was a Briar Hill word that we
yeah,
used.
we're bringing it back.
You know.
And speaking of Anthony, I believe he sent us an email. So we've got Anthony Ipolo.
That's the guy, yeah.
IOPPOLO. Yeah, he says he sent us an email. And by the way, if anybody wants to send us an email, wants to send a question in, wants to send a topic to talk about, send it to Steel Valley Syndicate at gmail.com. It's right up on your screen. Steel Valley Syndicate at gmail.com. Anyways, Anthony says, great series. I had a great friend from your area, dated a girl from Boardman years ago. Used to take her and her family to Bobby D's all the time. And he says, he goes on to talk about, let's see here. Do you know Joe Donatelli and Bob Palazzi? Do those names ring any bells, Jimmy?
No,
No.
not at all.
Okay, they said they buy ready mix concrete when they're in my area. Station Grill at Malillo's in Lowville. So there you go. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out. Hopefully, we're going to be in Lowville. Actually, this week we're going to be in Struthers, actually, on Lowville Road. Should specify. We're going to be at Cut and Toast. We're doing a live mob talk segment. So who knows? We might run into Joe Donatelli and Bob Palazzi, but we'll tell them.
I remember that name, Donatelli. I do remember that name, but I can't recall where or why.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, thanks for the question, Anthony. And anybody else, if you have any questions or topics, again, send them to us, steelvalleysyndicate at gmail.com. So yeah, we're recording this pretty early in the morning for Jimmy out there in Las Vegas. And I hear you had a late night last night. Is that correct?
Oh my God. I went to the Bootlegger restaurant with Dennis Bono and Lorraine Hunt, who owns the Bootlegger. And they invited me out to see my dear friend Gianni Russo doing his show, which incidentally was fabulous. And he covered everything in his life. And he does a hell of a job. And afterwards, Lorraine and I and Johnny and Dennis hung out in the restaurant and had dinner. And they decided to leave early because they wanted to go to bed, Lorraine and Dennis. And Johnny and I and his pianist, we hung out there late, chatting and laughing and going back over old tales and everything that happened in Las Vegas, when we were on the road. And Johnny is incredibly funny, and
Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Gianni Russo, very famous. He was in The Godfather. Actually, he was an actor. He played Carlo in The Godfather, marries the Don's daughter, and fortunately, he doesn't make it to Godfather 2. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen The Godfather. But Gianni Russo's, great. He's got his own podcast out right now called The Hollywood Godfather. So he's doing a lot of things out there. So pretty cool that you went out with him. And I know you guys worked together for many years. But what actually happened? You called me. I got a message from you yesterday saying that it wasn't going to happen. What was going on there?
Oh, you mean between Johnny and I?
Yeah, you said something like you went out and it was a no-show. What happened?
Oh, well, we was supposed to have dinner at Michael's restaurant at the South Point, which is a really high-end restaurant. I mean, 2 or 3 people, $1,500. I mean, it's like really ridiculous. A very exclusive restaurant. So I walked in at 7 p.m. and I said, I'm here for Gianni Russo, and the maitre d' said, he's not here yet. So he said, sit at the bar and have a drink. I said, I don't drink. He said, well, have a bottle of water. So I sat there for an hour and 20 minutes, and nobody came. Well, by that time, I lost it. I was, and the maitre d' came over and said, well, I guess you got stood up, so I was, I wasn't in a very good mood. So driving back from the South Point, everything has changed in the last few years since they built the Raiders Stadium. And I got lost coming back, and I was really frustrated, So I went home and tried to get some sleep, and I got up the next morning, and the phone rings. It was Johnny. And so I yelled at him, and I said, what the? And I started yelling at him, and he says, who do you think you're talking to? But not in a nice voice. Listen, Italians don't speak nicely to each other. We're not from Montana, North Dakota. I mean, those kind of people, they don't, I don't know, they're the white, we call them white people. They talk soft and gentle. We don't talk that way. I mean, you think I'm going to say, hi, Johnny. What happened last night? We don't talk that way. I mean, Jimmy, you know that we're emotional.
Yeah, exactly.
So when he called, and I said, "What the?" Yeah, I hate to use that word on TV, but you know what I said. So he said, "Who do you think you're talking to?" Not in a nice voice either. And he said, "Go bump yourself," and he hung up. Now I'm really frustrated. So in the interim, I called Dennis Bono because he was expecting me and Lorraine from the Bootlegger to go to the show that night. I didn't expect Johnny to call me back. I said, you know what, Dennis, I'm not coming. I told him what happened. He said, well, I don't know what to tell you unless he calls you back and apologize. I guess you're in the right not to come if you feel that way. I said, I'm not going to go. And 5 minutes later, bada bing, phone rings, it's Johnny again. And I explained to him like I explained to you. I said, how do you think I'm going to feel? You let me hang in there. He said, wait a minute. I lost my phone in a cab for 14 and a half hours. I was down at the Mob Museum doing a show, signing autographs. I went to get my phone, and I couldn't find my phone. The other 3 people tried to call me. Nobody, I couldn't answer. I didn't have my phone. I lost it in the cab. So I said, well, okay, let me apologize then. I said, I feel bad. He says, well, I feel bad. I hung up on you, and I apologize also. So let's put it behind us. And he said, get your butt in to see the show tonight. I want to give you a hug and a kiss. And that really made me feel good. So I turned around and called Dennis, and I told him what happened. But even, and he says, well, okay, you got to show up. So I showed up and enjoyed the show immensely. And then we went backstage. I did send you the picture. And,
yeah, we're gonna put this picture. We're gonna put this picture up right now. Check out this picture, guys. It is really an amazing picture. It looks like something out of out of The Godfather itself, right? This picture. Look at
By
that
the way.
picture. That's really cool.
That's a great picture, Jimmy.
That's a good story too. You guys are like an old married couple, you know.
Yeah, it was like a soap opera because Dennis said, "My God, you guys like two old Dagos having an argument," and you know, what are you going to do? Italian people,
right.
we're just different. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I got the fair skin. I got the blonde hair, the blue eyes like my mom, but I come from the Ciccatelli side, and you know, I tell my kids, I got three boys, and I the Italian temper will burst, you know, every now and then. I say, hey, listen, I tell them because sometimes it scares them, you know. You start, I go real loud, real quick, and I said,
Yeah,
listen, you know, I said that's just the way we are. We you know, we yell sometimes, but I said you just got to weather the storm, and you know, 2 minutes later, calmer heads prevail always. You know, and
yeah. It's always it goes by quick and it's over with, and
it's
you don't
over.
even remember
Exactly,
saying it. So
exactly.
that's the way it is.
See that?
Anyway, after the show, you notice in the picture he's got a cane,
Yeah,
and when he walks in New York, he takes that cane, and he got something at the end of the cane that somebody messes with it, he can use it. Johnny's no
that's
wimp,
funny.
and
You know who had that same thing was Jack Licavoli had a cane. He was you know the boss up in Cleveland there for a bit. He was at a Warren too, but he had
yeah,
a cane and he got busted with it at you know, I think it had a dagger in the end of it. Yeah.
I
I,
had one
I
of the,
mean,
I had one of those too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it
don't
was
know
my
what's at
grandfather's
the,
old cane. It's one of them straight ones, and you twist the top and you pull it out, and it was a long blade about that long.
There you go.
walking in New York 2 or 3 miles a day like he does, and he said somebody better not come around me because he said they're going to fill it. So whatever it is
Yeah.
he's got in there, that's going to be a defensive weapon for him, you know.
How late were you guys out last night?
Well, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then by the time I got home, and then I went into my music routine before I went to bed. So I didn't get to bed till about 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And but by that time, I don't drink, but he made me drink a little sip of wine, uh, red wine, so that helped a little bit. But it was fun.
But the Dago Red?
Yeah, it was good,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rufino, and it was good. But he and I discussed some of the Hollywood things that went on, and he told me some stories that make your hair raise, and I told him some stories that were so revealing about Hollywood. I mean, it's just a different animal there. I mean, people, they're out of the ordinary. I mean, they do things. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, three women. We're not going to mention their names, but three famous actresses going after each other, and guys that you would never believe that were gay. And I mean, we talked about that kind of stuff. We talked about
Yeah.
other people. It's incredible, the Hollywood scene, which he really doesn't like, and either do I. I mean, it's not what we're raised about, Jimmy. I mean, it's just something you got to just contend with, but you can't believe it happens, but it does. It's a strange world out there,
Yeah, you know what
you
they
know.
say? They talk things you wouldn't do to a farm animal, right?
Believe you me, I was doing the L.A. Italian festival with Gianni, and the girl that was supposedly married to Cary Grant, Diane Cannon, she walked by me. She looked about 700 years old, and her behind was about 5 inches long. It looked like she had no behind. I said, Mingia, what do they see in this woman? That was like many years ago. I don't even know if she's still alive. But, you see everybody that's all in film. They're all walking around. They're all over the place, and it's kind of interesting. But I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
live there.
I was out there for 12 years. I lived out in Hollywood for 12 years and tons of celebrity experiences, celebrity encounters. I mean, we can get into We can get into that stuff in the future, but there was, like you said, you just see them. You'd be at the grocery store. There's Mr. T
Right.
standing in line at the pharmacy, like
Yeah,
like
those
legitimate.
character actors that you know their face, you don't know their name, but you know who they are, and they walk
Yeah.
around and they look like, as we say, Mama Luke's. Jim. I look at him. I knew this guy from Western films. They look at him and he looks like Joe Mangalajam. I don't know what his name is, but it's the reality comes into the effect. And say, how does this guy ever get in a movie? He
Yeah. Yeah.
looks like a farmer.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway,
I'm glad you brought up Hollywood, because that's something we want to talk about real quick. Is we teased it in a previous episode. You've got a lot of experience musically with Elvis. You worked with Elvis. First of all, tell us when you worked with Elvis and how that was.
well, the first experience with Elvis is he came to rehearsal. Now we got about a 35, 40 piece band that I booked. He walks into rehearsal, no music. I'm going, Mom Najila Bhutan, how's this? What are you going to play? He had no music. So we had to improvise what they call in unison, which means everybody had to play the same note just to make it sound interesting. Because if we didn't make it sound good, the hotel said, what do we need a big band? Because Elvis had his own band with the rock and roll guys, and they were great. But he wanted to fill up the stage with a big orchestra. Be honest with you, he really didn't need it. But we made him need it. So that's where I told you about that piccolo. So he came walking on the stage, and I picked up the piccolo, and I started to improvise da 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 da. So the trumpet players picked up on the melody, the trombone players picked on the saxophone, and we made that melody da 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 da. And so that became his opening number. And from then on, he would sing songs, and we would improvise behind him. And then after that rehearsal, Joe Gersher, the conductor, and I got together. I said, we better write some charts quick so that they will have to need us here. Because if we didn't have something that was sounding really good, they could have said, get rid of the band. But it cost a lot of
Yeah.
money, 35, 40 pieces. And we had a hotel owner there, or no, accountant, really, Alex Shufi. He was no dummy. We
What
filled
year
up
was
that band.
this?
1969, late 69.
This was at the
Late six,
International.
international.
That's a very iconic that you were saying that da 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 da. That's very
Yeah.
iconic. I mean, I've always heard that associated with Elvis
Yeah,
growing
I
up.
just started playing on piccolo, and everybody picked up, and that became his opening number. I mean, it's
Wow.
not a great line, but I mean, it's simple. But at least
Yeah.
when you walked out, now when 35 people will start playing it, there you go. We harmonized it and made a piece out of it.
Yeah.
That's how. So anyway, we got the band to fill in. Then the singers, the Sweet Inspirations, they jumped in, and of course that became his number. And then we wrote some beautiful music behind him, and that really started sounding great. But Elvis was a very moody guy. Uh, Sometimes the word would come down, be careful, Elvis is in a bad mood, which meant a lot, because if you messed up at the rehearsal or got him angry, you might be gone.
Yeah.
And that was very much of a possibility. So we were on our best behavior. And one day, the fellow that I told you played My Funny Valentine at the draft board, Kenny Hing, he comes in whacked out. He was playing baritone chair. He was just totally whacked out, drunk. He sat down in a chair and he couldn't hold his head up. It was falling to the side. And the word came down, Elvis is in a bad mood. Maran Nami. So I told the stagehand, Lupe, I said, pick him up pick up the music stand, pick up his saxophone, get him the hell out of here. Because if Elvis sees that, we may all be gone. So they did. They picked him out, brought him in the backstage area, and got him out of there. And Elvis came down, didn't even know he was gone. So they had an empty chair, but an empty thing, nobody was there. So we got away with that. But when he was in a good mood, he was joyful, humorous, having fun all the time, pulling pranks. And with me, once we created the American Trilogy, which is a number one hit for a year and a half, he wanted me to play it he told me, play it like you're sitting under a tree in Georgia, sipping a glass of wine and eating some cheese, laid back like you're playing a flute solo on Dixie. And we did. And I played it. We did 19 takes. He took the first take. And that became a number one hit. But during that solo, he became in his Elvis, the Memphis Mafia, which stood on each side of him. There were three of them: Sonny West, Red West, and the other guy, Lamar. They would stand on the side. They got to the point. They all brought water guns, and they because I had never missed a note on that solo. We always used to talk about it. And they start shooting water guns at me while I'm playing the solo, trying to get me to miss that note. Da 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 da. That real high note, which is everybody used to miss on the road. And they're shooting water guns at me, and Elvis is throwing water at me, unknown to people. Like compared to that movie,
Just messing with
you. That guy from Canada, whatever he is. I mean, he did a nice job. You wanted me. Well, he did a nice job, but a lot of that music was overdubbed, parts of Elvis' voice and so on. But anyway, they're throwing water at me. Elvis standing 2 feet in front of me, throwing a glass of water at me. I was drenched after every solo. So I grew this little goatee under my lip. So I put the flute over there so it wouldn't slip. And I never did miss a note. And he always remarked, I want to introduce my flute player, Jimmy Mullador. Played this flute solo 187 times, never missed a note. But he never said that he threw water on me or the other guys had water guns on me. So that's the kind of guy Elvis was. He'd come down to my dressing room. Sometimes during the middle of the break during the show, he did 2 shows a night. And we get like an hour and a half break or an hour and 45 minutes before the second show. And he got so tired of people trying to get at him, so he come down to my dressing room. I had a better dressing room than him. And he come down, I go upstairs and go to the coffee shop and get a bite to eat, leave the door open. He go and take a nap in my room. When I come back, he always had a guy from Arizona coming in with turquoise jewelry. And he leave tons of turquoise jewelry for me. He was very generous. And I had more jewelry than you can imagine, turquoise, bracelets, rings. And Johnny, all these women that I were with, married, they all robbed all the jewelry from me. So I don't have any of that left, including that TCB necklace that he gave me, which was very valuable to me. I mean, he only gave that to a few people. And that means take care of business. You really take care of business. He'd go out of his way to give you a necklace. And but compared to that movie, I'm trying to paint that picture for you. The guy did a nice job. The Colonel, I never saw Colonel. He was either out there gambling all of Elvis's money, or he would be up on West Charleston Avenue at a barbecue place, eating his heart out over there and getting fat. I never saw the Colonel. I saw his father a lot.
Yeah.
But
yeah, in the movie, it was for anybody who hasn't seen it, the recent movie, Tom Hanks plays the Colonel, and I didn't know anything about the Colonel, right? So I'm watching this movie, and Tom Hanks is on there, and he's got this really goofy accent. He's supposed to be Dutch, right? The Colonel was supposed to be Dutch, so he's got this accent, and I come to learn afterwards. I've watched an interview with the real Colonel. He didn't even talk like that. He didn't even have this.
No, he did.
This accent.
You just answered my answer to you about going to watch that movie. I didn't go. I know you may be angry at me, but I don't want to watch that movie. I can't stand that phoniness. Now the guy did a nice job. He probably won Academy Award. He did a hell of a job. Took 3 years to make the movie. And my daughter researched it, so I can give you some answers. You probably don't like that, but my daughter Lisa told me some inside information because she does movies and so on and so forth. But the colonel did, like I said, he didn't talk like that. I mean, occasionally we see him, but he was never backstage monitoring Elvis. He had enough Memphis Mafia with him. His dad was at every show. Vernon was a nice man. He gave me a nice plaque. I sent you some pictures of a plaque that he had made that he gave me as a memorabilia. And Elvis was just a sweetheart when he was okay. He invited me up to his suite every night after the show. They'd have party. He looked like Zorro. He had a black cape on, the sunglasses, a little thin cigar, and and he's always doing that karate crap. Ding, ding, bing, boom, bang, boom. Hey, and I'm going, what am I doing up here? I'm from Briar Hill. What? They don't do this shit. And we're trying to make like I'm interested in it. What I care about karate moves. I'm not into that. Come on.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to act like I'm interested. Hey, that's great. Could care less. And you go through these parts. Everybody and their mothers up there. Angie Dickinson, Diane Carroll, Sammy Davis. Everybody and their mothers up at the party. Tom Jones every night he's up there. And I'm up there, and I'm like Dean Martin. I didn't like all of that party and crap, but I'd go because he'd asked me to go. And I go up there, and he was, by that time he was high, but in a good mood. And he'd change out of that Elvis costume into these other ridiculous costume. I mean, he always looked like something out of space, but looked good. Don't get me wrong. All very expensive costumes he would wear at the party. And always the glasses, and I mean, he looked like just the most handsome guy in the world. And broads all over the place, and of course,
Tell us about when Elvis passed.
Well,
how did that affect you?
Well, let's see. I was Joe Gershio was his conductor on the road. I provided his band members, and I used to contract the band for him on the road. I couldn't leave the hotel because it was my orchestra, Jimmy Mullidore Orchestra. Joe was the guest conductor, but Joe was his conductor, and he was on the road. And previously, but before that, maybe a month before that, he told me, "Man, Elvis is in bad shape." He said, "I don't know, man." He said, "Doesn't look good," and he said, "We're all kind of worried about him." And then he called me. He said, "Elvis just died. I got the word." And I reacted unusual. I said, "Well, I guess doesn't surprise me." He said, "Well, don't you feel bad?" I said, "Well, yeah, but," I said, "you told me a month ago he was ready to cack anyway." And yeah, I feel bad, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and there you go. And you can imagine what happened after that. And that's the reaction that I had after Elvis died.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of music fans were sad that day, and the king had left the building, and this just one of the many superstars that you've come in contact with and that you've worked with over over your career. We're going to get into a lot more. If you haven't checked out Jimmy's book, it's called The Vegas Player, and it's available right now on jimmymullidore.com. You can check it out. There's so many of these stories in here, guys. You have to check out this book to get the inside scoop. And we're going to tell you a lot of these stories every week. We'll do new episodes every Thursday. But right now, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. We'll see everybody next week. Jimmy, thank you for sharing those stories with us. And next week, we're going to get into a little bit of your love life again. We'll get back to your love life. Marriage number 2 and its Youngstown mob connection. And we'll get into all that next week. So till then, everybody, Johnny Ciccatelli, Jimmy Naples, of course, the man himself, the Vegas player, Jimmy Mulador. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Love you guys. Take care.
That was an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company. For more, subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/amazingpodcastcompany.